Alright, what's going on, guys? Trev back again. I'm going to bring you another video. This one's going to be doing a video talking about viewer requested topic. Could humanity ever recover from a zombie apocalypse? Okay, so this one is kind of a Walking Dead topic, but at the same time, just in general, a zombie apocalypse type topic, and that is, could humanity ever actually recover, let's say, for example, in The Walking Dead to the state where it's at in the television series and in the comic book series, to where, at least in North America, and we also heard from Jenner in France and pretty much every other country as well, that walkers have basically taken over. It's to the point where zombies have completely, basically, killed human beings to the point where it's less than 1% in terms of the odds. You would have like one person per every, I don't know, 1,000, maybe 5,000, zombies out there, to the point where we're basically almost extinct, which is what we see in The Walking Dead, essentially. So the question being is that, could humanity ever be able to actually regroup and, take back over, essentially, from that state? This is something I think in the future in the Walking Dead comic book series, and if the television series lasts that long, we'll get to see, and I think it's what Kirkman eventually wants to get to. I mean, I could be totally wrong. Maybe eventually he'll just kill Rick and that'll be it. But I tend to think that Rick, in the long run of The Walking Dead, is our lead character for a reason. Not just because he's a good survivor and he's survived a really long time in the comic book series and the TV series, and probably will continue to do so for at least a little while, but I believe also because he sort of has bigger plans for him. Like, he's going to lead this recovery, essentially. And a lot of the events in the comic book series and in the television series are kind of to put him in a position where he is plays a key role in the leadership, and also just of the creation of a group of people, like the Alexandria Safe Zone, for example, that will eventually be able to start to recover and become huge communities, and basically start to clear out their areas of walkers and essentially start to take back over some territory and actually recover from this zombie apocalypse. I think in the comic book series that's where he's going in the long run. Will we ever get there? Because it could take a really long time, like another 20 or 30 years of the comic book series to get there. I don't know if we're ever going to see that. The television series at the same time too. For me, I tend to think that the comic book series will probably run longer than the TV series, because you have less people involved. You have just basically Charlie Adler and Robert Kirkman, and then the I forget the guy who does the inks, but you could really replace any one of them, especially the artist, because we've already seen a switch of the artist before in the Walking Dead comic book series. In the long run, it's probably more stable because you only have a few people involved, whereas in the television series, you have so many people involved, so many things can go wrong, ratings can slip, I mean, all kinds of stuff can happen, producers and AMC, the network, and all kinds of stuff can happen to where the show could get canceled eventually. It's a bigger investment, and as a result, if the ratings were to slip at some point, in, I don't know, 10 years or something, if that did happen, then hopefully it won't, but if it did, then the show could get canceled sooner. So we'll never see it in the TV series, because they tend to not have as long of a life as a comic book series does. So in the comic book series, for sure, I think eventually we will see that happen. We will see Rick eventually do that. Hopefully. I mean, if he just died out of nowhere, wouldn't it feel like the whole story was kind of for nothing? Like, you follow him on this journey all the way through, and he doesn't really, I mean, he survives and he keeps his people alive for long enough, but then in the long run he just dies anyway without doing anything that's really that spectacular. I feel like we're following him because he's going to do something great, which is create a huge community of people that eventually will clear out at least the area they're in and start to rebuild, a good-sized civilization, not just like 50 or 100 people, like thousands. That's what I think eventually where he's going with it. So that's in terms of story with The Walking Dead, in terms of what I think with that. In terms of in real life, if this kind of thing happened, if everybody was infected with some kind of airborne agent, and when they die, they would turn into a zombie, I don't think it's possible, because you would have the difficulty of trying to control it and it would just spread. And then as soon as somebody, because everybody's going to die eventually, they effectively switch teams, become one of the others and attack, and then it can spread again and switch teams. And it's just like it would just, be realistically too hard to control and too hard to come back from. I don't think that you could really do it. I mean, you could have groups like in The Walking Dead, what we see, but over the long run, I tend to think that sooner or later, in those types of odds, where you have like 5,000 walkers or zombies to every one person, and when those people die, they're going to turn into zombies as well. As skilled as some people can become at surviving and things of this nature, I tend to think as they run out of food, it would become harder. As they fight against each other, it would become more difficult. And eventually, I don't think they would be able to actually recover from it. I mean, you'd always have some people out there that would be, just out there in the world, maybe on remote islands or things like this that are not infected with the airborne agent, so they don't turn. You'd always have stuff like that. But I think as long as the walkers don't just straight up have a lifespan and die off, that no, we wouldn't ever be able to recover from something like that. I don't think so. Anyway, my opinion. But I mean, at the same time, on the flip side, if the walkers do starve eventually and die out, then possibly we could out-survive them just in time and then rebuild even more. That's something that in most zombie apocalypse stories we haven't really... Yeah, I've never seen that explored in anything, that maybe the walkers would just starve to death eventually and just die and decay. I mean, The Walking Dead, you get some that will be really decayed to the point where they can't move as a result of not having any food or anything, or just get cooked in the sun and stuff like that. Like the one in the TV series that Carl takes the knives from in the driver's seat because he's strapped in and he just cooks, so he basically dies. If that happened to all of them, then I can see that. But from what we've seen so far, they are decaying at a slow rate, but there's nothing to indicate that they would ever completely die out, So, I mean, logically, it's kind of like, wouldn't they have to? But then at the same time, it's like, can you really apply logic to a zombie apocalypse? I mean, it's out there to begin with, right? So most of the stories that I've read, most of the zombie apocalypse movies and stuff like that, and The Walking Dead, they don't ever really mention that eventually the walkers will starve to death and actually die. They all seem to go under the pretenses that they'll always find some kind of food or something, and they'll always kind of survive. Even 10 or 20 years down the road, there'll still be some around, no matter what, basically. So it depends which way you want to go with that. If you see it as over the long run, in 10 years they will all die out, then of course humanity could recover from that because they would just die. And then if there's any survivors, we'd just be like, oh okay, we can go back to living now because they're all dead. They won't attack us anymore because they can't move. If you're going under that thought pattern, then yeah, we could. But if you're going by most of the common way to think about zombie apocalypses, and that they wouldn't ever really totally starve and there would always be some of them out there, and we would always turn into them when we die, no, I don't think it's possible to recover. So it's kind of an if based on how you look at the starvation question, whether or not they'll eventually completely starve out, which is not, most stories, like I said, they don't really, even though logically they probably should, they don't. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I got to say about this topic. Let me know what you guys think about that, which direction you go. I mean, I can see people rationalizing it either way. If they want to see it as we could because they'll die out, fine. We can't because they won't, then that's the story. Most of the stories go based on that. And then at the same time, if you think maybe they wouldn't die out, but we would be able to fight back eventually, okay, but I just don't see it. So, my opinion, I don't see it. Maybe in a story in The Walking Dead, that could happen. But in real life, I don't think so. Anyway, I'll call it here. That's it for this video, guys. I'll see you for the next one. This is Trev, and I'm saying peace.